John, it's good to reconnect with you again and have you on the podcast.
Yeah, great to be back. It wasn't too long ago that we did our first podcast together, but honestly, feels like a fair bit ago.
Yeah, it does. It does feel like some time ago. I think my country was like in full lockdown. I think when
Right.
we last recorded.
Yeah, COVID was still a bit more fresh, whereas now it's really the normal, right? Life
Mm,
kind of feels more normal. It does for me. Do you feel that way?
mm.
Like things kind of feel more normal, even though they're different?
Yeah, it's kind of like a new kind of normal, isn't it?
For
I
sure.
think I remember going to supermarkets and being the only person with a mask on,
Yeah.
and then they brought the restrictions in place, and it's like
hmm
it's kind of just out of the way it is now, isn't it? It's just like, well, yeah, okay, this is life now.
Yeah. Yeah, it is definitely a new normal. And even just going to the store in general, I felt concerned about it. Like
Mm,
on some level, I was a little fearful. When I look back, like during when COVID first started and stuff, I was telling myself, oh, I'm not fearful. Like it's okay. I have faith. The world isn't ending. But when I look back now, like 6 months ago, I definitely had a certain level of fear. You know what I mean?
mm.
Like when I was at the store and stuff, I didn't feel totally comfortable. Whereas now, and maybe it's the masks, maybe it's that people I think are, you know, washing their hands more or something like that. But I think
Yeah.
on some levels, just get used to it, and that fear's kind of gone away, and I feel more comfortable being out and about now.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I remember, going through lots of anxiety, many kind of
hmm
sensations of like anxiety, like waves of anxiety, just and then part of me was like, I mean, I'm okay. I'm in a supermarket. What's the worst that's going to happen? And
Yeah.
your mind just starts racing because of the media and other
hmm
people. When I was going to supermarkets, they look scared, so then you start to feel
Exactly.
scared.
uh
Whereas now I think there's a lot more boundaries, a lot more kind of restrictions in place. Safety measures. There's hand sanitizer in pretty much every place now.
Yeah.
Um,
That kind
things
of
like
gives me anxiety now. There's almost like
yeah,
over sanitization is starting to be what I fear more. I don't know.
yeah,
It's kind
yeah.
of
It's
transitioned into that now, but
to the one extreme to another,
yeah,
isn't it?
exactly. Yeah.
But um, but no, I totally agree, and I just think we adapt as people, and
hmm
that's kind of the way we work. But as well, like before we started this, we were talking about the topics we're going to talk about, and you mentioned
Right.
about like podcasting
hmm
and kind of piecing it together and this kind of thing.
Yeah. Yes. Even more than just podcasting, like I've just been thinking a lot about in general, like um, just all the varying interests and ideas that I have, and that there's many things that I want to create beyond just podcasting, and even with podcasting, I want to sort of, I guess, integrate that with video and just content in general, just a whole wide range. And I just feel this deep need to create varying things. And every once in a while, like you'll get caught up in your routine with life, right? Like during COVID and stuff, like we were just mentioning, you always have some certain routine, something that you're focused on in the day to day. But then every once in a while, I'll have these moments where maybe it's like a quiet morning and I'm drinking coffee and reading books. And then I'll just have this flood of ideas come over me again. And it's like I'm all of a sudden reminded of all the varying interests that I have and all the different things I want to create, the different things I want to do. And then you're almost like rediscovering your ideas, right? Because I find so many times I'll get a different idea of something to do, something to create. And then I kind of put it on the back burner, right? I put it in my memory and say, okay, I'll do that in the future. And then again, you get into that routine. You're focused on whatever the matter of the day is, right? It's like washing your hands and going to the supermarket, whatever like the focus is, going to work, doing the day-to-day stuff. And then you'll be reminded someday of all the creative ideas you had, and you're like, oh, okay. And then I guess it's always for me figuring out how to integrate those ideas into your life instead of keep instead of keeping to just put those ideas back again, like they come out, you think about them, you get excited, you're like, oh yeah, I can make films, I can make a movie in the future, I could write a book in the future, I could do podcasts in this way, I could do it in that way, right? All these different ideas. You're like, okay, I'll do that, maybe next year, I'll do that in the summer. And you keep putting them back and putting them back. So for me, it's about right now discovering how I can just start to incorporate those creative ideas and start making a little bit of progress on them, because that's, I think, what matters, is to start acting on them little by little, day after day kind of thing. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, no, I can totally relate to what you just said, and I agree. And I think, um, like doing what we're doing, because I mean, you've got your podcast as well, and when you're, creating content, sometimes you get, like you said, different thoughts and ideas, and they come to random times as well, like in different
Mm-hmm.
places, thoughts and ideas. And I had one like last night at like 10 to 12, and I was like, what, why now? I'm just,
Yeah.
and today I forgot about it. It kind of came to me
Mm-hmm.
later on in the day. But like you said, we kind of have to kind of take our ideas and the things that we're thinking about and try and, for me, put them in front of us or write them down or have a way
Mm-hmm.
where we can kind of structure them. Because I mean, I've done it, like you said, where I think about it and then it goes.
Uh-huh.
And then it might come back in a week or two, or it might not.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be difficult when you're in that routine or in that kind of way where, because our minds are processing so many different things. We've got all ideas about podcasting and everything else, and then we've got our lives as well. And it's sometimes it's trying to compact that in our day, isn't it, and trying to bring that forward. But I think the more we do something, if we take like an idea about, I don't know, making a clip or making a piece of content, I feel if you just do that one bit, it's just kind of the momentum picks up a little bit, and then that can carry through to probably doing something else. But I find if I don't then do something else, it kind of slip back a little bit.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's all different, and that's where all these different angles comes in, right? And it is like that, right? It's like there's a billion different ways to do things, and even just day by day, there's a billion different directions you can take your day. And I think one of the hardest things, hard in a weird sense, right? It's not like, I don't know, once you start actively working on a creative idea, it's easy. It's not hard. Like to me, what's really hard is like doing something you're forced to do that's totally you're not interested in, right? Like there's hard things in life in that sense. But in another sense, it does seem difficult to like integrate into your life those creative ideas and to act on them. And then once you do act on some, to not let that slip away and to not lose that momentum and to have that balance of doing things like making money, paying the bills, going to the gym, having like routine that's necessary in life. And then also working on those long-term creative ideas, that thing inside you that you were like meant to create. I think everyone has many of those different things, maybe some more than others, but everyone has that sort of like inner genius, or however you want to describe it or look at it. And so many times, again, you can go on either side too. I think there's people that go like overboard, just focusing on like those creative ideas, and then they neglect other areas of life, right? Financially, they're screwed, or they're in debt, or they don't have a family life or social life. And then also there's what I think is most common is the people that just have the mundane focuses and the mundane routines locked down, but then totally kill all their creative ideas and don't focus on those at all. And again, it's just trying to find that balance. And I believe it's very difficult to do that, although it seems easy on the surface. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think, like, as people, we have our habits, we have our routines, and I think when we're doing something new, it's difficult because it's kind of out of our routine,
Mm-hmm.
and especially if it involves, I don't know, doing something that causes discomfort. You know, if you, I don't know, if you go into the gym at a,
Yeah.
this is, you know, for me, my challenge personally is getting up at like, I'll say get up at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Because I used to go CrossFit in the daytime, and I went at like 6 o'clock in the morning once. I felt terrible.
Yeah.
And I was like, my body was like, why am I doing this? You know, your
Mm-hmm.
mind's telling you not to do it before you've even done it.
Yeah.
And I think that's sometimes what we come up against. Is we come up against, I think, our comfort zones, you know, our
Mm-hmm.
routine. But I think over time, they say 3 weeks to develop a new habit,
Mm-hmm.
and then it kind of, you come in the flow of it. But I think
Right.
it's just pushing through those kind of, you know, comfort zones and kind of stepping out of that normal routine, isn't it? And
Mm-hmm.
trying to keep that going.
Definitely. Uh, yeah. Now, what about, you know, just embracing your creativity, right? Like,
Mm.
is that like, do you think that's stepping out of your comfort zone? Because in many ways, like when I look at, again, those creative ideas that I have that are like
Yeah.
deep within me, I feel like those come from childhood in my case. Like I really, when I connect with a creative idea, whether it be like maybe I'm reminded of it through a dream or just an idea late at night or something comes to me, in a lot of ways, I feel like that's connecting with a childhood dream or goal or idea that I had. Like I feel like that's where those creative ideas stem from in me, at least. And so to like live out those dreams and start creating those things, whatever it is,
Mm.
that seems like it be uh I don't know, right? It's interesting because just in terms of comfort and discomfort, right? Like it's
Yeah.
hard to pinpoint. Is
No, I
it more
know.
comfortable living a traditional life, going to work and stuff like that, but you're kind of crushing your deep dreams? Or is it more comfortable once you do start to live out those dreams, right? But then you have to kind
Mm.
of say no to certain things society wants you to do, which can cause a lot of discomfort. So it's a weird dichotomy in my mind, and I can't really come to terms with it or
Yeah.
understand it fully.
Yeah. I see what you mean. Because
Yeah.
no, I'm just going to reflect on what you said, because
Okay.
you know what you said is, you know, you want, you know, to embrace whatever is going on, you know, within yourself or
Hmm.
ourselves as people.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like say if you wanted to be like, for example, like a pilot, and
Hmm.
inside, you know, you want to be a pilot, and you embracing this and, you know, enrolling on that course, and you know, like you said, alongside everything that kind of society's kind of taught us, and or parents, or you know, growing up. But
Hmm.
inside, we've got that kind of thing within us, like, you know, where you're like kind of, I think probably from what I see is like, you know, stepping into that, you know, kind of submerging yourself into that.
Yeah. 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 And
Yeah.
then, and with that comes a lot of comfort and a lot of discomfort, right? Because it can be comforting knowing like I'm working on that thing that I feel deep inside I need to do. But then there's discomfort because for some reason, right? Like society and our cultures kind of do a really bad job of encouraging ourselves to live out our true dreams and desires. And whenever a person does that, you feel like you've hit a wall of discomfort, and people are encouraging you almost to not pursue your dreams, which is funny because people will say go after your dreams and reach your fullest potential, but then you start to act on certain things and people might start calling you crazy or a dreamer, or
Mm,
that's not in reality. We all have to go to our 9 to 5 jobs and don't stray too far out. Like you're going to be a
mm,
crazy person if you do that. And that brings a horrible level of discomfort, one that is sometimes unbearable.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I get what you mean. I like, I think that it's people's life scripts that, you know, everyone's kind of got their own life script. You heard that
Hmm.
term, like people's life scripts, and
For sure.
people will say to you, oh, why don't you get a job, or why don't you get a job and do this? And the thing is, half the time people are being kind of told that by their parents and their parents'
Exactly.
script, and that gets kind of put down onto us. So we kind of absorb a lot of that.
Hmm.
But I think as well, when I've done jobs in the past, I've been doing, like, I've worked in bars, things like that, hotels,
Hmm.
and for the most part I enjoyed it. But I
Yeah.
kind of hit a point where I felt guilty for being there at the job, because I knew deep down I wanted to be doing X, Y, Z, or I
Right.
was still trying to figure out what that X, Y, Z was, but I knew I was worth more than what I was doing.
Hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with doing those jobs, by the way,
Yeah.
but when you kind of know that it isn't for you deep down and you're looking for something else, it can be difficult. But
Yeah, and that's where I think you need to find that balance, and that because like you said, I've worked at a hotel as well, and I really enjoyed the job, but then I really disliked it in other ways as well. And even looking back, like every job that I've had, I have fond memories of it, and I enjoyed the comfort that it provided me. Every job I had an extreme degree of discomfort, though, for sure, especially when starting out. But looking back, I did feel very comfortable during those times when I was really involved in a job for quite some time and things were going well in that regard, and financially everything was secure in my life. Those are some of my best times, right? My most secure and comfortable times. And I enjoy that aspect of life. I really enjoy having that routine where it's certainty, right? Put in X amount of time, get X amount of dollars, and then have X level of comfort, right? You
yeah,
know what you're capable of. Like, I can eat this type of food that I can afford, live in this type of place, do these types of activities, gives you that baseline comfort, right? So, and that's all good, I think, especially when you're young, like you and I, and just sort of starting out in life, really, in the grand
mm,
scheme of things.
mm,
But it's to combine that, I believe, with most definitely is to combine that with like also pursuing creative pursuits, and you're living out your life script kind of thing. And I really believe that that balance is possible. And I think
mm.
as day goes by, day after day in my life, I'm starting to see that become a reality, and it is very encouraging. And so what's your thoughts on balance, and like, maybe just in your own life right now, and
Yeah,
just in general?
yeah. No, it's a good question. I think with, like, my current situation at the minute, and where I'm at is, you know I kind of do need that balance, and I think that's
Hmm.
important. And I think, with when you was talking about, like, discomfort and having that kind of comfort, I like to feel comfortable. I like to chill out. I like to,
Yeah.
we all kind of, you need that downtime just to wind
Hmm.
down, have that comfort. Um, and sometimes, I kind of sometimes would feel guilty for having that comfort, because I'm like, I
Yeah.
should be doing this and not watching TV,
Hmm.
or am I going to lose? Almost kind of fearing it sometimes. Am I going to lose momentum if I do this and watch this program for half an hour?
Hmm.
Um, but, like, we have to give ourselves a break, because I think if we don't do that, then we just burn out. We
Yeah.
need that kind of bit of time at the weekend or whenever we're free to just to kind of, like, do whatever it is that we like to do, recreational wise or whatever.
For
Um,
sure.
but yeah, I kind of need that routine, and I'm one of those people, who like to be busy. I like to be
Yeah.
doing.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, I'm currently unemployed at the minute, other side than doing my podcast and everything else.
Hmm.
So for me, I'm looking for jobs and doing the podcast. I'm doing other things, but to have that routine, I find it important to have that kind of some kind of schedule as
Yeah.
well. Um, is important. It kind of keeps you a bit focused. It keeps you focused because you know that you've got things to do. Um, and
Hmm.
it's just, trying to give ourselves a bit of a little break sometimes,
Yeah.
because I think like the weekend just gone, I was on PlayStation with friends for a bit of time,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
and if I don't have that kind of time to myself to do that thing, I'm not effective
Hmm.
the week ahead. It gives you that kind of boost, I find. But like with discomfort, I think, you know, as a person, we grow through discomfort, and I think we're kind of wired to have comfort. You know, we're wired
Mhm.
to, you know, in our minds to seek comfort, run away from danger.
Right.
I think that's where it kind of like comes from for the most part. And
Mhm.
but through discomfort and uncomfortable times, it's how you kind of grow. That's how I find. I think, you know, you must have felt that through podcasting and doing these kind of things.
Sure. Yeah.
The first however many you do, you know, you're worried about it and you feel uncomfortable, and
Mhm.
then after X amount of time, you don't feel so uncomfortable. Does that make sense?
Well, it totally makes sense. And there's different things, like different thoughts and different I guess ways of approaching things that help me to actually feel comfortable. You said this in our first podcast, comfortable in the uncomfortable, right? And so
Yeah,
there's definitely like ways of approaching things that help with that. And you know, comfort doesn't always, I think when we say comfort, people just like assume sitting on the couch watching TV, and yeah, that's comfortable, but there's like there's more to comfort than just that. You can feel very comfortable doing something that's uncomfortable, and then it's all perspectives too, right? Like it's interesting, like whenever you can listen to podcasts of Navy SEALs or people who have done these insane things in wartime and stuff like that. And obviously, on some level, they felt pretty comfortable in those situations, because if they didn't, they just wouldn't have been able to perform, right? And through repetition, through preparation, practice, they've gotten to this point where they feel fairly comfortable in those chaotic and discomforting situations. So there's definitely
mm,
processes that we can do to help with that. And I guess, yeah, that's like the ultimate goal, is to is to develop, I guess, ourselves into the types of people that just feel comfortable doing things that are a bit uncomfortable, because that will allow us, I guess, to live out those dreams and to do what we want to do, right? Because what stops us a lot of the time is either doubts from other people, doubts from ourselves, or just, I don't want to do this because I'm feeling discomfort, right? And I'm just going
mm,
to choose to not do this. Like with a job, you can feel very comfortable with the 9 to 5 to the point where you just don't do anything else, right? You don't start a podcast even though you want to, right? You don't do anything else because you have such comfort and security in your job that you almost start lying to yourself and saying that this is good enough. I'm happy with where I am, right? That's to me the big issue with comfort. It's not like, oh, if you sit on the couch and watch TV and be comfortable, that's bad. It's like, no, that's pretty good if you do that in moderation. But I think the biggest danger of comfort is when your level of comfort always stays the same, right? And
mm.
you avoid discomfort, which causes you to avoid growth and causes you to avoid just progression as a human being. And uh, I mean, another sort of side tangent there, right? But I think there's
Yeah,
definitely something interesting there too.
yeah. No, I totally agree with you, and I find that with that like discomfort as well, you know, we I think it's totally important to do that, because you're you're embracing the unknown, you're stepping into the unknown.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us as human beings fear the unknown, what might happen, and this can like come from, you know, past situations that, you know, I've had a bad situation where something didn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, oh, should I do that again because XYZ might happen again, or people are going to think this of me. And I
Mm-hmm.
think, you know, the situations that have happened in our past have a lot to say how we sometimes live out, you know, our lives, and the things that we've taken from those situations. I mean, I had that with podcasting. I didn't do a podcast for 2 years.
Yeah.
I was worried about what people are going to think.
Uh-huh.
I didn't, yeah. So I had lots of, you know, irrational, limiting beliefs.
Definitely. Yeah.
And then when I did it, it was just a bit like, oh, this is cool.
Yeah.
What was I
Uh-huh.
worrying about? Do you know what I mean? And I
Uh-huh.
think that that's important.
Totally.
Yeah, and people need to just. I say to people, just try things out. Just
Yeah.
try things out. Like, you know,
Yeah.
what's the worst that can happen? Okay, it doesn't work out.
That's so
Not,
true.
but a lot of the time we fear things not working out, or that we don't want to disappoint certain people,
Mm-hmm.
because, you know, I've tried different things out, different jobs and things like that, and I'm sure you have. And
Yeah.
you gain experience from it. You gain
Yeah.
experience from it. And
Mm-hmm.
people who, I feel sorry for people who are kind of stuck in that place because, you know, they're worried about what people are going to think or whatever it is. And it, you know, just try it out and see what happens, because you just don't know until you try.
Yeah.
And that's far better than having the regret of not doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And now I want to bring this. I totally agree with that. So you gotta like continue to try new things, to do new things, to embrace some level of discomfort and stretching yourself, stretching your abilities. Now, let's bring that kind of circle back to what we were talking about, like with having a balance in life,
Hmm.
right? So, you know, I've always kind of believed that we can position ourselves in an optimal way in life, right? Like you
Hmm.
read books and there's tons of podcasts and people, coaches and mentors, like tons of advice you can get on how to live an optimal life, how to balance different things, how to have an optimal morning routine, how many times a week you should go to the gym, what kind of foods you can eat. There's so much knowledge on how to optimize your life and so much help you can really get. That's funny too, right? Is you see maybe like people in life and you can just see them on the street, you can tell like, oh, there's a bunch of areas of their life they're not good in, they're struggling. And it's kind of ironic because all you have to do is start asking people, asking the
Hmm.
world, to be very broad, right? But you just got to go out there and say, hey guys, like I'm struggling in life, can you help me? And people are going to guide you along the way, even if it's not an in-person connection. If you just go to library and think, I have this specific problem, I need to find a book that'll address this issue, and it's like you're going out there asking for help and receiving it, even though it's just you and a book, right? But there's always like an answer out there. So but then that is totally true, but then there's also this fact that, and when I was like kind of in high school, I was very naive. Once I did start to realize that there is an answer to everything in a sense, and I realized, okay, I would write out like the perfect weekly routine for myself, right? The perfect routine, all the things that I ought to be doing, when I should go to the gym, what I should eat, what I should do, when I should do computer work, when I should have a job. I'd write this all out, and I would always notice like, how come I'm not doing everything on my list? Like, yeah, it's stretching me a little bit. Like, yeah, it's quite a bit, but it's all within my capabilities to do it. I wasn't like just telling myself to do something crazy that I had no way of doing. It was like, yeah, the gym's down the street for me. I can afford to get a membership. I can go and do that, but yet I'm not. It's like, yeah, I have a kitchen, I have a fridge, like I can cook the right food, I have a bed, all these things. Like I have the internet and a computer. All this stuff is within my means to do. But often I would find I was only maybe doing like anywhere from like 10% of it to like 90%. But still, I was never fully like just doing all the things that I was realizing I should be doing. So that taught me that, yeah, you can know all the right things to do, but you have to contend with yourself. Like you're a
Hmm.
human being, and you can't just have your brain be like this dictator and just say like, do this, do that, do this. Like you think it would work that way, right? You think you just tell your body
Yeah.
to like go to the gym or go do this thing, but there's something inside you that like rebels against yourself, and there's just this whole dichotomy of like, and then you almost feel like there's multiple people within you in a way,
Yeah.
right? So that's just a aspect to it as well, right?
Yeah. No, that's a good. It's a good. You know, it's a good aspect of what you said, and it is definitely true. And I think we kind of, what you said, going back to making a list, is like, you know, I do the
Yeah.
same. I've got like heaps of paper here with like notes on.
Hmm.
And I think as well, like we write it down, the things that we need to do in our day, or things to do in general. And I think sometimes, like you said, we don't do it, and
Hmm.
it makes you wonder like why we don't do it, and to
Yeah.
question that. why aren't I doing this? Even like you said, even though the gym might be down the road and things like this, but like I think we can get distracted. We can get caught up in, our thoughts are racing, so fast. I think it says like faster than the speed of light or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
So if you,
Yeah.
so if you get like a thought that says, "Oh, I'm not going to do it. I can't be bothered," and you listen to that, sometimes sometimes we're not aware of it, and then we just kind of subconsciously kind of drift through the day.
Right.
Like you said before, you need to do 4 or 5 things on the list. But I agree with you, and I think like we can kind of come up against parts of ourselves, and it does like feel it's almost like you said, different people within ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think from what as a person, I think it's because we like comfort. We are so kind of ingrained in our routine sometimes, or certain beliefs about ourselves prevent us from doing those things for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I've seen it when I've seen certain jobs and I'm looking through, and part of me might think I'm not going to apply for that, but that's probably because somewhere I might feel like I'm not good enough for that job. I don't know,
Yeah.
and that's come from some place that is my doing. Well, I need to change that narrative. So I think sometimes that's what kind of comes down to it.
Right.
But it's a very interesting angle of what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's super interesting, man. I think about it a lot, and I guess just becoming self-aware of that is a good step in sort of fixing that. But then also, like you said, like there's so many different thoughts going on at the same time, but also so much information coming in. Like, so using the gym as an example, you can figure out what on paper looks like the perfect routine for you, and you're like, okay, I'm going to achieve the goals that I want. And then maybe you pick up a book and it just flips everything that you learned about going to the gym on its head. And maybe it's like using science to prove that, hey, going to the gym 3 times a week is actually unhealthy for you if you want to live to be 150. And if you're looking to like do anti-aging stuff, only go once a week. And then you start to get conflicted, right? And then you just scrap your whole routine that you wrote out for yourself, and then you're searching for a different one, but then you go back to the original one you had. So I think for me, I experience a lot of that, like with my podcast, for example, and I think you'll be able to relate to this as well. So I'm always having different, I guess just with content in general, like content on social media, on the internet in general. I I often get conflicted, right? I think like, okay, I'd like to do, let's say, an episode a week. And then I build that up in my mind and figure out a whole system on how to do that, right? And then figure out okay, my life will be better because I'll do this, I'll achieve these goals, it'll be good. And then maybe I'll go back against that, right? And I'll start thinking like, oh, well, I'm not the greatest podcaster right now. And really, when I look at my life long term, I got a lot of time to be doing this. So, right now, if I'm feeling a little bit of stress trying to do 1 podcast a week or 2 a week, whatever that goal that I had is, then I go back against it and say, oh, maybe it's okay if I like did 2 months without doing a podcast. Maybe that's what I need, right? So, there's always conflicting ideas and different angles. And you know, it's just I feel like a struggle to stick to one thing in
Yeah,
terms of like um, pathways set out to achieve things, even just within content and creating.
yeah, yeah. No, I get what I get what you mean. I think like with that, we all kind of have that within us. If that makes sense, like we all kind of have those kind of personal kind of inner challenge, like inner challenges.
Yeah.
Kind of within us as people, and we all kind of have our own um, challenges within. And I find, with what you're talking about, like for me, what works for me is that if I do something, say, work out or post an episode or do this, for me, I feel within within myself, it makes me feel good. makes me
Right.
feel good.
Oh, without
You
a
know,
doubt. Yeah.
so like even doing this, it makes us feel
Hmm.
great because we're
Yeah.
doing it and you're putting that action into it. Whereas if I don't, is the flip side,
Hmm.
and I don't feel good, and I feel like sometimes drained,
Yeah.
negative, flat, these kind of negative emotions for not doing it.
Hmm.
And then the dangerous thing about that is, okay, the next day comes along and you don't do those things that you meant
Yeah.
to do the day before, and it's
Hmm.
almost like a domino effect. So it just goes, and
Yeah.
then that can leak into a week or months. And it's I find being aware of that, that's what works for me.
Hmm.
um Knowing what makes you feel good if you do it and what doesn't, and being aware of that. Like, so yeah, I think just kind of being self-aware about that and where
Mm.
you're at. And we can all get into ruts as people, we can all get into routines, but I think if you kind of do that little thing and it makes you feel good, it makes you want to do more of it.
Hmm.
And as well, with the content that we make, a lot of people are going to benefit from the stuff that you put out,
Right.
and a lot of people, hopefully going to benefit from this and the things I put
Hmm.
out. And I think what I thought about sometimes is that you put out content and you might get feedback, people saying
Yeah.
that's great, and that makes you want to feel good. And sometimes if we don't make it, or if we don't do certain stuff, we can probably feel like negative because people out there need it and you don't know what other people
Mm.
are going through. Do you know what I mean? So that kind of
Yeah, I totally know what you mean.
it's
For
that
sure.
it's that kind of balancing act with it all.
Yeah. That's the whole thing, man, right? That's like what I'm trying to get at within myself, is to strike that balance. And I think that I'm close to like really understanding it. And
Mm,
I don't know if that's the same naivete, however you pronounce that.
yeah,
I don't know if that's me being naive, just like I was in high school, thinking that I could write out the perfect weekly routine and actually follow through with it. In reality, there's always going to be something that you don't do, like I was explaining, right? So I
yeah,
don't know if it's naive of me now to start to think again that I can create and develop a sort of perfect, optimal life in a sense. I know
yeah,
that sounds very naive, saying like, oh, I have all the knowledge to create a perfect life, but hear me out, right? Like I do actually believe that throughout the experience I've had trying to create that like perfect day, perfect month,
mm,
perfect week, like
mm,
stacking like the domino effect, like you said, but in the upward trajectory, right? Not
yeah,
like a
yeah,
downward. We all know that's real. We all know that downward spiral is real, that you keep putting something
mm,
off, it just gets harder and harder to do. You feel
mm,
worse and worse about it. So if that's true, obviously the other way is true as well, right?
mm,
If you do something over and over again and that momentum just goes upwards and things get easier and better for you as well, and you get more positive, more happy, you feel more gratitude, you get more money, right? All that is true on the upward trajectory as well as the downward trajectory. And yeah, man, I truly feel like I'm close to, or maybe I'm here right now, and that I can develop and just have a very good daily, weekly, monthly routine that
mm,
just day in, day out is continuing to put me in a better place in life. And I'm just feeling that upward momentum, and I'm never allowing any bit of downward momentum to come in. And I'm just doing one thing after another, no matter how small. And I think that's the key, actually, is to focus on the small things to get that upward momentum going. Because you have some big goal, and if you can't quite achieve that, that might start the downward spiral, right? So
mm,
it's got to be little things that you can achieve. And I think with that approach and with that knowledge, I personally, I feel very good about just going forward day in, day out, and feeling really good knowing that and just feeling that upward trajectory.
yeah, yeah. No, I totally agree, and I think as well with that is what you said about noticing the small things. And I think
Yeah.
what when you say, like, throughout your day, the tasks that you're doing or things like that, it's looking at like the things that we have done, isn't it? The things that you have done in your day,
Mm-hmm.
even though you might not have got all the things done, but looking at the things that you have done. And it's like I said, those small things do make a massive difference. Somebody told me a quote, and it's like, how you do one thing is how you do everything, or
Oh,
something
wow.
like that. I
Yeah.
don't know who said that. Somebody did say
Yeah.
that. So that kind of comes in my mind sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
and the compound effect as well,
For
which
sure.
I saw you got it on one of your books,
Mm-hmm.
and somebody talked about it to me, and I think that's pretty effective. That kind of small 1%. That
Mm-hmm.
small push. Each day kind of slowly builds, and I think we do need to kind of like look at that small things, and how you start your day, as somebody said, like how you start your day, kind of then builds that momentum. Like if you have a
Right.
negative thought, that's going to then knock on to the next thing. But
Mm-hmm.
like the small things and being grateful, gratitude is key, isn't it?
Yes.
Like when you
100%,
mentioned,
man. Mm-hmm.
I saw a guy. What's his name? Is it Brett? Brett something. He's like a bit like Gary V. And he
Okay.
said, I've done all these courses. I've been around all these people who neuroscience and all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And then what it comes down to in the end is gratitude.
Mm.
And that's what he said at the end. And I was like, wow.
Yeah, I think I'm understanding that more and more too. And it's not something that was ever like taught to me very clearly as a child or in school or from parents or society, really. You hear like cliche things like be grateful, be thankful, but it never really resonated or made sense to me why. Like obviously, yeah, say thank you, say please, like that stuff is basic understanding, but I never really understood the power of like just being grateful for the things that you're doing, like within yourself, right? Like expressing gratitude, I guess, to yourself in a way, or to the world, or to everything. And that I think is a great way to allow yourself some mental clarity and calmness
Hmm.
to go through the day-to-day things and be patient, right? Because that's, I think, a big thing too. Patience comes into the picture as well, especially in terms of like achieving things and creating things. For me, this whole conversation, I think that's like the underlying thing I'm trying to sort out when I'm speaking, and just in general, what I've been thinking lately is like to just consistently work on something, work on things, work on everything that sets me up for success day to day, week to week, and in the long term as well.
Hmm.
Right. And so that there are the things that come into that, right? Like having that balance in life is one thing that we talked about, balancing, making income in the day to day, the weekly, but then also not just sacrificing everything to pay the bills so that 2 years, 5 years from now, however, into the future, you're really no better off because you weren't working on anything else than paying the bills of the month, right? And then years go by, you're still just paying those monthly bills. You're not working towards like greater wealth or greater things like that. So there's that sort of balance. And then, okay, how to go through with that balance, right? You set up the perfect routine that you think would achieve that balance for you. So you have the right amount of work and like mundane day-to-day tasks. So you're dealing with all the human stuff that we got to deal with. But then you also have that amount of you're not sacrificing whenever it is you feel like you're doing your best thinking, or you're not sacrificing the time to do a podcast, to edit videos, work on those long-term things, right? So you've struck that balance, and then to go through with that routine without getting so distracted like we do, and without losing yourself and losing connection to that, then you kind of have the tactical things that we're now talking about, right? Like um, gratitude is a very tactical approach to consistently doing the things that you know you need to be doing,
Hmm.
right? You need to be grateful so that you feel that upward trajectory, you feel that momentum go in a positive way. And then there's patience as well, right? To go through with those long-term ideas and to go through with your day-to-day tasks and to work towards that. you need to have the patience. And what helps patience is having gratitude. And so patience and gratitude, what's something else, just as I'm speaking this out loud, well, what are some other like sort of tactical approaches that you're thinking of in terms of like keeping yourself at bay and like keeping yourself on the right path and not feeling overwhelmed by things, not feeling let down, and I guess tactical approaches to getting through those uncomfortable situations to continuously move up slowly but surely, right? We got, the balance, the gratitude, the patience,
Yeah. I think they're really key ways and good kind of like tactical ways of thinking and living as a person. I think, like you said, we need that kind of we need goals. We need
right.
I think personally we need to have goals. I think we need to have some kind of dream, whatever that dream is.
Yeah.
If somebody wants to, I don't know, if somebody wants to completely redecorate the house, that's a goal. That might be somebody's dream, and that they're personal to all of us. But I think another tactical, like I say approach is reflection. Is pretty powerful, because
right.
I think, like you said, we're so busy grinding, we're so busy working to get to the next stage, and then when we look back, situations that we coped really well in that might have been really difficult, you kind of put that to the now or whatever might be going on. You think, I can deal with this because I dealt with that however long ago. And sometimes, like, we forget that. I mean, I do. And sometimes, like, you might be in a work situation that's stressful, but in the past, you might have had something that was 100 times more stressful.
Right.
So that kind of gives you that kind of, I think, self-belief and that kind of clarity to then do whatever it is you need to do in that situation. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and that helps with the upward momentum as well, right? You're looking back at the steps you've taken to get there. Yeah, that is very key for sure. I think gratitude comes into that as well, right? When you're looking back at those things, you express gratitude for those experiences too.
Yeah.
And then clearly you can see how that's helped you get to where you are and how that'll help you get to the next step too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's the things we're talking about are so important. And I think, like, school doesn't prepare you for, school just gets, I have nothing against the school system at all, but there are certain elements in school that don't teach you that life skill, so to speak, or that kind of common sense. You just have to kind of fall into the pool, if that makes sense, and you find out how to swim along the way.
Yeah, definitely. Now, how about patience and like long-term thinking, right? That's something that seems quite hard sometimes. Well, I guess for me personally, I feel like it comes quite naturally and seems easy, but then to actually like act out, right? And like actually be patient about it, right? Like I can have long-term thinking all day long and think about and see myself where I could be in 10 years. But then to actually have that patience in, like, time's going to pass regardless, right? But your perception of time will be different depending on if you're patient or impatient, or if you're stressed or or not stressed. And so that's a whole nother animal to kind of tackle and to fix and to contend with. So yeah, whoa, patience, man, long-term thinking. And
Yeah, it's something I struggled with. Something I'm just kind of getting on top of, really. I to be honest, I think lockdown helped me with patience, and podcasting helped me with patience, and learning, podcasting's helped me with patience and trying to look at the process of things, because as a person, me personally, I like to hit the ground running. I like to be confident, let's go, and let's get those results straight away. But life doesn't always work like that, and I've been, up till about 20, So yeah, literally like in the last year, I've kind of, most of the years I've just been impatient, and that kind of, we're like two stones are grinding together, just wanting whatever it is straight away. And, that might have been down to how I grew up. It's getting your needs met, isn't it? We all want to get our needs met.
True. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
And when that doesn't happen, we can think, what's going on? But I feel a lot more patient now than I have done previously. But I think, kind of podcasting and just learning about the process kind of kept me grounded, and just understanding that things don't happen overnight.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's difficult.
It is difficult. Yeah. It's I feel very similar in the sense that during this past year, 6 months, however long, I've started to understand what it is like to be patient. Because it's one of those things you can say like, oh, be patient, have patience, but then to actually like feel patient, I think means that, like you said, you feel like your needs are being met and you feel content, so that you can just like sit back, do your things, do your work, do your stuff, and then just be okay with just, you do it, you put it out there, you go to bed, you have another day tomorrow, right? Another at bat, right? It's just over and over again. And once you get in that groove, you can really just be patient, and ties into reflection, like you were saying as well. All these things tie into each other. Now, I had another thought there. So I think that if you do have this just proper routine and proper things that you're doing, and you're writing out the tasks you completed in this day, again, the upward trajectory, right? Step by step, going up the ladder, positive momentum, that helps with patience too, right? You especially like when there's less stresses, right? Let's say, just as long as you're paying your bills, right? As long as you're like eating consistently, you deal with like those sorts of things, the basic human needs, right? You're not stretching yourself out too much and not getting into debt and those sorts of things. I think that helps with patience. That's like a baseline thing that helps with patience, and something that I've struggled with as well, right? There's certain times when money has been good and things have been good in that sense, where that helps me have more patience. But then when times get a bit more stressful and it's like, I don't know what I'm doing for work, I don't know this and that, and I have to like figure things out, or maybe I have to move or live in a different place, or those sorts of things will cause me to be impatient, because you're like stressed, you're trying to figure out, right? There's that uncertainty. So if you can like cover that basis, that'll really help with patience. And then when you are patient, that'll really help with continuing on your path to achieving whatever it is you're set out to achieve, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, as long as as long as we've got those kind of core kind of needs met, I think it keeps us more grounded.
But then also doing that along with knowing that you're like working on your long-term goals too, right? Your really ambitious goals as well, having that combined.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think when you're working alongside what you're doing, and then you're doing nothing on the side, and then you see the momentum just kind of burning, that building, it gives you that kind of like, it makes you feel good because you're doing X, Y, Z, and you're doing the other X, Y, Z as well alongside that. And, it's kind of keeping those turbines moving.
Right. Yeah, you're fueling yourself, right? Just.
Yeah, no, I know exactly. I had a thought a second ago, it might have gone, just to do what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So I can remember. See, thoughts going really fast. That's
exactly. Yeah. But I'll throw in one thing. Gary Vee, to quote him, right? Micro speed, macro patience, right? I think that's a real thing. So like in the day to day, you're doing a lot, you're achieving a lot, but then like long term, you're just very patient with the results. You're not trying to force anything, and you're okay with things taking a long time. But in the day to day, you're like ambitious, getting things done. That's it too.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's a really good point. That's a really good point. And I think like it can be difficult because of the world that we live in now. this is what I remember.
Okay.
Is like, gratification.
Yeah.
We live in a world where you can click a button and you can get a parcel the next day,
Mm-hmm.
which is great. But
Yeah.
I think we get so caught up in all these little things of instant gratification, is that can kind of make patience more difficult if we're caught up in that loop, because
Mm-hmm.
we're not getting, you're not getting those instant results straight away. So I think, like you said, we need to be so. No, that's where self-discipline comes in probably as well. We
Yeah.
self-discipline.
That's I'm glad you brought up that self-discipline, because
Yeah,
we're kind of like piecing things together here, right? In terms
yeah,
of,
yeah.
I guess, just life in general. I think
Mm,
that is probably the final piece to this, right? We got like balance, we got routine,
mm,
momentum, patience, gratitude,
yeah,
reflection. Self-discipline, I think, is that final piece that you really need to cultivate to get
mm,
you through it all.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely something that is key, isn't it? And I think that's something that I've been thinking
Yeah.
about a lot recently. And I saw a quote. See if I can find it on the internet. It was
Mm-hmm.
by founder. Founder.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And it was like a discipline quote. And it said something like, without self-discipline, there's no success, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Founded.
Yeah, I love how Jocko Willink puts it, right?
Mm,
Discipline equals freedom. And
yeah.
that, you know, I think is very true. Just
He's a
like
really good
how
guy.
just like how seeking discomfort, doing uncomfortable things will lead to you being comfortable, right? There's a dichotomy to all of this stuff, right? Yeah.
Mm, yeah. No, I agree. And
Mhm.
I think I think that's the bottom line of it. I think
Yeah.
that discipline is the bottom line of everything.
Yeah.
You can have all those other things in place, but if you're not disciplined, then those other things aren't going to kind of propel that thing forward. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah.
There's,
It's like the foundation to it all, but then also it's the end result of it all as well, right?
mm,
So it's the beginning and the end. So what I mean by that is you need that self-discipline to start the process, but then also, um, when you're on the process, when you're doing those things that you're telling yourself to do, then that fuels more self-discipline. And then with
mm,
that self-discipline, you use that to do the next thing, which once you complete creates more self-discipline. So it's like the beginning and the end, right?
mm. No, I like that. No,
Mm-hmm.
definitely. There's a quote I just saw, and it's on by founder, the is it Page founder? It's a company, is it founder?
Yeah.
There's a quote that they've got, and it says, "Discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment."
Mm.
And then people fail to achieve mastery not because they aren't talented, but because they aren't disciplined. That was
Okay.
Dan Pink.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think that's exactly it, right? Like if it's the bridge, it's kind of like from point A to point B, right? Like I said, it's like the beginning and the end, right? It's what gets you there and what gets you to the next place at the same time, right? I think
Yeah,
that's the foundational piece to this all. And honestly, man, I think I'm gonna go back with this and sort of write out
yeah,
all these things and how they've connected to each other, because I do see it all as like this big circle, like a sphere,
mm,
right? And it's
mm,
just the whole process of, I don't know, of being human, you could say,
mm.
maybe. Like it's a process to something, and it definitely makes you feel like we wouldn't be like discussing this whole thing if
No,
this didn't seem like the path that you want to be on as a human, right? Obviously, you're born into this world, you just like live life as a human, but we're not like animals, right? We got to actually
mm,
put thought into our lives and thought into what we want to achieve, and there's got to be a purpose to our life, right? And we
mm,
have to discover that and then actively work on that purpose. And so we wouldn't be discussing all these things if we didn't feel like inside of this all, inside of these processes and routines and disciplines and patience and long-term vision and creativity, inside of all this stuff must be like the purpose, or at least what we should be doing as human beings, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
no, I totally agree. I totally agree. And I think like we kind of, like you said, we come into this world and we have to kind of figure it out,
mhm,
figure it out along the way. And it's almost like somebody hands, like we come into this world, this is the kind of way I see it just now. You come into this world and somebody hands you like a big tangled up ball of string and they're like, oh, here you go, figure it out.
mhm.
And you're like, okay. And then you're just going along. And I think as you go along and you have kind of conversations like this and
Mhm.
you experience certain things, that kind of ball of string just kind of, I think we kind of unloosen it, don't we? Kind of
Mm.
unloosen it bit by bit as we go along.
Mhm.
And then we're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And
Yeah.
I don't think we ever untangle that ball of string
Mhm.
completely. I think sometimes we might,
Mhm.
and
In
then
certain areas, right?
yeah, and then life
Yeah.
goes, yeah, here's another one. And we're
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
okay, cool.
But that's actually a good thing, right? Because without that, then it's just, then you finish, right? And then you're complete.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, I did it, and that's it, right? So there's always going to be like more complexity added to it and stuff
Mm,
like that. And I would even argue, going very deep with this, I would say that even like the end of your life doesn't mean that you've like, I don't know if you're using that string analogy or something like that, just like a ball of complexity in essence, right? A ball of strings like that. You could just say that's a ball of complexity and chaos and order and everything. And
mm,
so I don't think that life is just like you start out, you get handed all this complexity and different things, and then
mm,
you go through, try to figure that out. And then when your life's done, when your life's over, then it's like complete. I would even argue like that isn't the end of it, right? There's like always going, and there's always something, even if
mm,
like your kind of human life, and not to get too like deep on that, but I don't know. I don't think it's just like you're born and then you die. I think there's even more to that. So,
mm.
um, yeah,
Yeah,
I think
that's,
the it's always a tangled up ball, I guess,
yeah.
and you never just unravel it all. There's always a new thing. There's always
Mm,
another step, another process.
mm. Yeah, no, I agree. I think, yeah, we could go down a whole nother rabbit hole with that.
True.
It's it's I think if you in terms of like energy, that I mean, we could go
Hmm.
into one area, it's like energy, spirituality, and everything else. That'll go one way, and then I think as well, in your lives on the other side of it, it's okay. People will live and then they die, but some people like it's that kind of legacy that you live. That when you see is it like for example, Walt Disney,
Yeah. Okay.
for example, he had this vision. He created Disney.
Yep.
He's gone physically,
Hmm. Hmm.
but the spirit of kind of what he's created is probably going to always be there.
Yeah.
That kind of side of it.
Exactly. And everyone understands that, right? You don't, that's not even like spiritual. That's like, no, this guy's dead, and you can have no thoughts in religion or be totally atheistic, but still admit that there's like some part of him that's alive in a sense, because what he created is here for us, right?
Hmm.
That's like everyone will agree with that because it's real. We see it, right? But I would even say there's even like beyond that, and in some way, like his sort of energy or something is still like present, even more than just like what he created is still here. I would say like what he is in a sense is still here. And that's just one example, but all the greats of history, right? When we
Hmm.
read about what they wrote, or what people wrote about them, or what they did, or like you said, go to Disneyland or watch Mickey Mouse, right? That's
Hmm.
like their spirit is still there. And so I think that perspective actually ties into what we're talking about, because if you have that perspective, it's pretty easy to dismantle fears or doubts, or be worried about failure, be worried about these silly like human things, right? When you're thinking on such a big like cosmic scale, it's pretty simple to diminish your silly fears or silly doubts and to just go through with your path and just say, well, this is what I'm here to do right now. Let's just keep going and see where it takes me, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree. Totally agree.
Yeah.
Wow.
It feels very nice to articulate these things in such a way. It definitely
Yeah.
gives you clarity, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, it definitely. Yeah, it's amazing.
It is. And I think you need more people thinking and talking in this manner. You know what I mean? Like, because it definitely leads to something. It leads to you as an individual doing better, or at least feeling like you're doing what you're meant to do. It leads to collectively groups of people feeling like they're connected to something. And man, I think that purpose, I guess, is
Yeah.
maybe the last piece to the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
And we kind of started, I think, talking about that, right? I was saying like,
Yeah.
I feel like all these different things I want to create, and I feel like these ideas have been with me since childhood, kind of thing. And that's kind of how we started this conversation. So I think that's really the overarching connector to everything, even beyond self-discipline, is like having purpose, right? And feeling connected to purpose.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we kind of went like kind of full circle through each kind of things that kind of we all kind of have as people. And when it comes back to purpose, I think, like I was thinking recently, like if something isn't making you feel uncomfortable, or if something isn't making you feel a certain way, there's a reason why. Do you know what I mean? If you're doing something that's uncomfortable, there's a reason why. You're going to grow from it. If something is energizing you, there's a reason why. And that can kind of be tied into our purpose. Like, doing a podcast or making content, I sometimes get more gratification from doing that, and I'm energized more from doing that and being paid to do a job I don't like. And I think that kind of like when you kind of tie into your purpose and you find out what that is, or something that's kind of within that purpose, you kind of just want to share. You kind of want to spread that. You want to help other people find their purpose. And I mean, Christ, like some people find out what their purpose is as soon as they're in school. They know what they want to do. They know what they want to be. Some people find out when they're like 50 years old. They don't realize they want to be the president or the CEO. And I think that is kind of what we're all seeking deep down as a human being, is purpose and that kind of reasoning and who we really are and what it is that we want to do, and the kind of people that we want to be around. It all kind of ties into lots of different things.
Yeah, it's definitely achievable too, right? Like you can definitely tap into feeling connected to a bigger purpose, in many different respects, right? Like I feel like I am, I have a purpose to contribute to many different areas of life, right? Like podcasting is one that's really easy for me to latch onto. And again, it's like, society needs more conversations like this. It needs more creative thinking. And so that gives me a huge sense of purpose. But then also there's other things, right? There's purpose that I find in connecting with family members like my grandfather or other people, which is totally unrelated. Well, it's still kind of related to what my purpose would be with like podcasting, but it's in a whole different domain, right? So your purpose will kind of come about in many different aspects of life. And I think it's very doable to tap into that purpose often and all the time, right? And just to have that as your North Star, the thing that guides you through.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think we all kind of should, work out what our purpose is and keep on doing things in order to find it. And I think as well, sometimes people seek purpose through doing, I don't know, there's a flip side to it. People can do things externally because they think that's their purpose, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's within ourselves. But sometimes we have to do, I think we have to do things externally to then find it. Does that make sense? We kind of,
definitely. It's like I think that can be exemplified in like a spiritual pilgrimage that someone maybe goes to India, right? They feel like they need to like do something to get connected to their purpose, and they go
Mm,
visit some Buddhist temple, right? And then they're like, okay, now I found my purpose, right? That kind of like I think represents
mm,
that idea that
yeah, yeah.
often you got to go on like this big journey or just go and do things one after another, like set a goal and go look for something there and go on like a pilgrimage, go adventure, go travel, go somewhere new. And out there in the world, somewhere else, you'll find something out about the world, and hopefully you'll find something out about yourself that you
Mm,
can then use as, okay, I've found my true purpose, or I am more on the path to finding my purpose.
mm, yeah. No,
Mm.
no, completely, completely. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to touch base?
No, I think that definitely gives me a strong sense of purpose just talking about all these things, and
Yeah.
makes me feel quite grounded and content and patient
Mm,
and grateful.
yeah. Yeah. No, exactly. I
Mhm.
feel the same, and I'm completely grateful and humbled, to connect with you and be able to talk
Mhm.
like this and have this podcast and conversation, and um, yeah, it does definitely give you food for thought, doesn't it? Makes you think. It makes you realize a lot when you kind of go into these kind of things because
Yeah.
we're all kind of on we're all connected. We're all on our own little journey, and this
Mhm.
big kind of journey, aren't we? If that makes sense.
Huge journey.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the biggest, man. Yeah, that totally makes sense, and uh great
Yeah. Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's good, man.
I don't know what more I could say really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where can people find you on like social media, like
Hmm.
your podcast?
Yeah, I guess I should address that as well. I kind of rebranded my podcast a little bit. Like I started out, I almost like it is very small at this point. I haven't done much for the podcast, but still, even during the last 4 months, I've learned a lot about how I want to approach things, how I want to do things. And so I started by calling it the JP Bar Podcast. And the
Mm,
JP Bar is like a logo that my grandfather made to brand his cattle, and just kind of like the family logo. And it was kind of passed down from him to my dad to myself. And it's just kind of, all of our names started with the J, our first name, and last name started with a P. So the JP and then just the line underneath. And so, anyways, I called my podcast that from the start. And then I kind of didn't like the way it sounded or the way it flowed. So I'm changing it to the Plumbly podcast, which is my
mm,
last name. And I think it just flows a bit better, sounds better. So the Plumley podcast is from now on what my podcast is called, and where people can find my content. That's
mm.
Plumley, the Plumley podcast. And the logo, I'm still using that JP Bar logo, that family logo, but I decided to just to change the name a little bit. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's where I'm at with my content and with my stuff. But yeah, the Plumley podcast is from here on out going to be like the the name, the title that people will be able to search, Google, Instagram, and to find my content and stuff. So
Yeah. No, that's awesome,
mm,
and I
yeah.
think it's great. That you're just doing. You're listening to yourself. You're just doing. What you think is right.
Hmm.
And I think it's a great job. What you're doing, and I really like your content,
Mm.
and yeah, I wish you all the best on what you're doing.
Yeah, I appreciate that a lot, man. And you're one of like my early connections with podcasting. So I
Yeah.
think just going forward, I'll continue to value this podcasting connection that you and I have.
Yeah. 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 No,
Yeah.
same here. I'm really grateful for it, and I look forward to being back on your podcast next time if you ever want to do it again.
Yeah, definitely, man. I think many more to come.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
But no, it's been great talking to you. But have a great day where you're at or
Yeah.
what you do.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, man.
No, all the best, man.
Yeah.
Take care, guys. See you soon.